Well, welcome everyone to this Sunday virtual class, sponsored by the BYU Library Family History in Provo, Utah. Today we have Jerroleen Sorensen as our instructor, and she will be teaching the topic of how do I use the free BMD and the GRO to do British research. She is very knowledgeable in researching and teaching genealogy and family history. We're grateful that she has taken time to prepare on this subject. So I'll turn the time over to you now, Jerroleen.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name's Jerroleen Sorensen, and I am a family history missionary at the BYU Library in Provo. And today's topic, how do I use the GRO and free BMD websites, is really great for me because it's one that I do really often. And I had that great experience today of being able to find someone's ancestors' maiden name on the GRO, and she'd been looking for it for some time, she said, and so I showed her how to use it and showed her how fantastic the GRO and the free BMD really are. So first, what is the GRO? It's the General Register Office of the United Kingdom. It doesn't have Scotland or Ireland. It only has Wales and England, so it's not everything. You have to get the others from their own national archives. It was established in 1837 because before that time, all the records had been kept as a legal thing in the church. So the churches were required to have them registered, births, deaths, and marriages, but it was a little bit, sometimes a little loosey-goosey, and people just kind of did it the way they wanted to. So that's why we have a lot of differentiation between different parishes of what was recorded and how much information is actually on those records. So in 1837, right after Queen Victoria was made the queen, the legislatures got together and they put together these laws. And one of the laws that they put together was the official recording law, which was called the Registration Act. So if you want to look up a civil registration before July 1st of 1837, it won't be there because they didn't have to start recording them until after July 1st. The other thing that you have to remember is after 1874, it was compulsory. Everybody had to, before that, you didn't have to record your birth, death, or marriage with the state. But at this point in 1874, then the law was changed and they made it so that you would get a fine if you didn't do it. So then they started actually doing it. The interesting thing about the GRO is that it also has sections on overseas things that happen, deaths, births, and marriages. Not all of them, of course, would have been recorded, but you can find those overseas, how to find the overseas events right there at the bottom. And if you get the handout, which will be on our website, all these URLs are going to be in there. Okay, so now how do you find the GRO index? It's really easy to find. You just Google gro.gov.uk, or you can Google General Register Office. So this is how it looks when you get there. And there's another page that might come up. If it does, then just click on whatever gets you to the order certificates online page. All of these indexes that are on the GRO are also available on the microfiche that they made a long time ago. But unfortunately, the microfiche is only available physically in England. So unless you go to England, you won't be able to access those. However, there are copies of the microfiche images on those sites down at the bottom, and a few other sites have partial copies of it. So why it's important for people in England, particularly, to have these indexes is that it allows them then to order very easily their vital records from the government. So what information will you find? On the birth certificate is the date, the place of birth, the name and residence of the mother, sometimes the maiden name, not always. it depends. The name and occupation of the father, that's on the certificate. Now, this is not what is on the index, okay? This is what's on the certificate. So if you want to get this information, all of the information, then you have to actually send for the certificate. I'll talk about that in a second. The marriage certificate has the full names of both parties, so this helps if you cannot find a maiden name. The occupations, the residences, the date and place, the names and occupations of fathers before May 2021. Now, the thing about the maiden names is that if you look on the index, because of the way they alphabetized it and put it in order into the volumes, they will usually have at least 2, sometimes 3 different people that they could have married. And like the person today, there were 2 Elizabeths who were married to 2 different men, but knowing which one was married to which man was the problem. And so I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that on the by looking the free BMD. I had to actually go, because that would just give me that information that's in the index. So what I had to do, and this is a really good tip for you, is I had to go to the children, and we'll look at that later. But when you go to the children, you can find the mother's maiden name oftentimes on the index, not always. The death certificate has the date of death, the age, the occupation, the final residence, the cause of death, the name and relationship of the informant. They are not very informative. They are not as informative as the death certificates that we got starting in the 19th century in the United States. So they won't have parents' names as a general rule. They won't have, certain other information that you might get from other types of death certificates in other places. This is an example at the bottom of one of the certificates for, and you can see some of these online, actually. Some of these, the parish records are online. This is not exactly like the certificate that you will get, but it's similar. And this is the information that will be on those certificates that you'll get from the marriage. This will be on the handout, and you'll see this gives you all the details about everything and when you can find those different details. On the index, however, as I said, this is not what's on the index. The index has the year of the event, the quarter of the event. That means from January to March, which is the M quarter, from April to June, which is the June quarter, from July to September, which is the S quarter, and October to December, that's the D quarter. So it will give you the year of the event, the quarter of the event, the district where the event was registered, and that's a little tricky, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. The volume and page number of the index entry. So what they did was they got all these records being sent in, they indexed them and put them all into a book. The original books were written in by hand, some of them, so you'll see a lot of them in the earlier days just written. After that, they typecast them. And so then we have them like this. And this is what you'll see if you look at the original of the index. You'll see the births registered. It will give you the dates, the 3 months at the top of the page. Then it will be by alphabetical order. And you will see the name, the district, the volume number that the record is in, and the page that the record itself is in. So this tells you where they'll go. When they look up a record, this tells them where to go to find the actual record. And that's basically what is on the index, because that's all they indexed. So where can I find more information about the GRO? The GRO just published some new guides in July, and they're really, really good. And these are just a few of them. These aren't all of them, but they're called the Family Tree Guide, and they're for genealogists. And so they've really tried really hard to pull genealogists in to be able to use their services. So you can go to one of these and take a look, and then it will direct you sometimes to other places as well. So their help right now is just awesome for genealogists. They did a really good job with these. They're very, very good. How do you order a certificate? Once you've got the indexed information and you know where the certificate is, then you can go to the GRO and you can use the ordering system. The ordering system for an online one is the cheapest and the easiest, but it's not so easy to find. So just look around and see what you can, if you can find it. It's not that hard. The actual ordering is really easy. It's just knowing where to find the PDF or the online form. Now you can't get those on marriages. PDF and the online form do not come with marriages. Find the GRO index number first, and we'll do that either on the GRO or in the free BMD. Then you fill out the form, you pay the fee. It's £11 right now. It has been that way for quite some time. And then 4 days after the certificate is found, which would be the day probably that you sent it, they'll start looking for it. They'll actually send you a physical copy of it if that's what you ordered. Otherwise, they'll email you a PDF, or they'll let you go online and take a look at it. If you don't have the reference number, they'll ask you to pay £3 extra, and that takes also 15 days. So that takes a long time. And the priority service, if you want it really fast, is £35. So that information is at these here at these URLs. What else do you need to know? You can order a PDF version and online view in JPEG format. The availability of certificates on the birth registration is 100 years old. Okay, so they'll send you certificates if they're over 100 years old, and the deaths from 1887 to 1957. So both of those, if the person who died is over 100 years old, then they'll send you the certificate, is what I'm saying, or who was born over 100 years ago. So that's the privacy law in England. No marriage certificates have been indexed or digitized by the GRO, so you're not going to find marriages. It was frustrating to me for a little while after I first started using GRO, because I'm like, where do I get the marriages? But you can't find them because they're not there. So they're not indexed on the GRO, but you can order certificates, and you can find those certificate numbers, the registration numbers. Be careful. I'm not sure exactly what the privacy laws that are applicable to the marriage certificates are, but they may tell you if you want them, and that they won't send them to you. They'll just say, I can't send them to you. So, but the index for them is on the BMD, and they're actually indexed to 1983 right now. The birth indexes on the GRO site only go till 1934, and then there's a 50-year gap, and then they start again in 1984. They started digitizing them, and they got up to the year of 1934. And then in 1984, they decided that they would put everything on digitally anyways. And so they started putting them on computer, but they didn't want to spend the money to do the rest of the digitization until 1984 of that 50 years that they didn't do it. So it's basically not there. And the same way with death indexes, they go up until 1957, and then there's a gap till 1984. But who picked up the slack on that was the free BMD. So that's why you can fill the gap using those free BMD indexes. So how do I use the GRO? First of all, it's kind of odd, but on that first homepage that I showed you, you have to click on the order certificates online page URL right there. So see that link right there? That's the one that you have to click on. You can't find on this particular page, you cannot find where to search the indexes. But once you click on that, then it will bring you up to this page. That page actually is where you're going to look to get into it. So this is actually just the registering page, okay? And it's got some information on it as well as this, but I wanted you to be able to see it big. So you put your email address and your password, and if you don't have a login yet, you can just register as an individual, and then you'll be able to register or log in anytime. It's easy. They will, if you don't put your password in right 3 times, they'll log you out for 15 minutes before you come back in. So be careful. And then when you click on your login, this is what it brings you up. And this is where you're going to find to search the GRO indexes, and it's right there. Okay, so there are other things you can do here. That's where you can order the digital image. That's why I'm saying you have to kind of look around to see that. But there's your digital image right there. Search the GRO indexes is what you're going to click on to find the index that you're looking for. Now, once you do get into the index itself, this is what the page looks like. I've got this one filled out, and it is very easy and really quick. You just have to be kind of a little bit careful about a couple of things. There is a range, but it is only 2 years. It's not like Find My Pastor where you can go to 25 or, you know, other places where you can go to 5 years or 10 years. So 2 years is all you can look at a time, 2 years at a time. It is slow, so just be patient. So what I usually always do is I start, like if I'm looking for a birth, I start just before the marriage date. So I'll put in like the year before the marriage date, and it'll go 2 years behind and 2 years above what that date is. So it'll look behind and it'll look forward. So if I put in 1852, it's going to look down to 1850, and it's going to look up to 1854. And that means that if you have to skip by 4s, that way you won't be duplicating the 2 years. Okay, so skip up by 4. So if I was going to go up to find something, like if I couldn't find James in 1852, then I would put 1856 for my next search date, because then it would go backwards to 55 and go up to 58. Okay, does that make sense? I hope. All right, use more than one spelling if you need to. They do have other things besides exact matches only. They're sort of like Soundex kind of things, but honestly, they don't work very well. So I almost always just change the spelling for however I think it might have been spelled, rather than having to plow through a million different really weird things that sort of seem like they might possibly be like that, which is what their options do. They're fine, but I mean, if you like that kind of thing, but I personally would just rather change the spelling. So I always start with the first name and the last name, and don't add the middle name, okay? Because sometimes the middle name wasn't given on the record, and if you put in an exact name, it'll look for the exact thing. Always make sure you put the sex in, male or female. I would start with, if this is someone that you don't know exactly any information, that much information about, then I would start with no mother and no district. Just start and see how many you're going to get, because it'll come up with as many as there are of that name. And then you can either look through, check through the results like this, so you can kind of get a feeling for which districts these people are in, you know, that have these. And then you can narrow it down by your district or by your mother's name. So these might be, the mother's name will come up. They say 1911, but guess what? It doesn't. It's not just 1911. It comes up on the GRO. It comes up all the time. If you don't know the district and you see all these districts here, and you want to find out if that district is close by where they were, where they lived or whatever, there are a couple of ways to do that. There is the historical maps on Family Search, which is really, really awesome. I've talked about that in other places before. It's called, if you search online historical maps, Family Search, it comes up to this page here. And you can type in whatever your parish is, or whatever you think the civil district is, and it'll come up with a list of all the ones that relate to that one. From that list, you can find out what parishes were in there, what the civil registration district was, and there's a little box that comes up that tells you different things about it, about the parish or the civil registration district. I'm not going to go through that very, very much, but you can also, there's a good map here, not a map, a chart. No, this one's not letting me go into it. Okay. There's a good chart here from the GRO that tells you when the districts changed around. And that actually can be super helpful, because they changed the boundaries on those districts so much in the 1800s, and they still do. Those boundaries changed a lot. And so if you're looking in the Lancaster district and it's really down in the Liverpool district because it's been changed, then you're not, you may still find them, but you're looking for the wrong district. So it may be a little bit more difficult for you to figure out which one it actually was. Okay, so this is also the registration district list on BMD. I like this one much better, and I use it all the time. From the first page, you can go to the alphabetical list of all the registration districts, click on the district that you're looking at, and then it will come up with all the towns that are in that district. And then it will come up also with different things about when it was created and when it was abolished. So it's basically the same thing as what's on the GRO, but it's a little bit better organized. So when you're doing a search, add the mother's name if it's possible, and add the middle names if it's possible, if you don't find anything or you find too many things that coming up. When you, I mean, James Carter's a pretty common thing. So when you do that, if you know the maiden name, then it's helpful. And I put Watson, which is his mother's maiden name. And I could have put the district of birth in there, which would have helped if I'd known it. At that point, I wasn't really sure of it when I was looking, so I didn't put that in. You can change from an exact match on the names to other options if you don't find what you're looking for. And if you see a hyphen, for example, down here where you see where it says Carter, James, William, and Bury St. Edmunds, there's a hyphen there. That usually means that her last name is the same as his, Carter, which usually means that the child is illegitimate. Some more little guidelines. I talked about moving up or down by 4 years at a time. They list the results in order by year and quarter. Let me show you here. So you can see James William, if it was all James, if it didn't have the William part of it, the James would just be ordered by James. If they do have a middle name, they order the middle names by alphabetical order as well, and then by year. And then also by quarter. To search for all the children of a mother. Now, this is something that will be really useful for you in the GRO, and this is what I do all the time. I find it, I can do this in Find My Past, I can do this in the free BMD, but I personally prefer to do it in the GRO. I find it just a little bit easier. Plus, I always find the maiden name, almost like 99% of the time. I'm going to find the maiden name being added in there. To search for all the kids of a mother, you will put, as you can see, the dad's name was Cook, William Cook. So I don't know his mother's, I don't know how many kids he's had, and I'm not sure, but I know that he married a writer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put his name, Cook, at the top, no names for the child. Then I put the sex as female or male. Then I put the mother's maiden name. I don't usually put the district, but sometimes I do. And then it depends on how common the name is. And then when I search, it will come up with all the people in that time period that I'm searching in that have that mother's maiden name. So that is really, really awesome. It works so well. And I have found so many babies who I didn't know about and children by doing it this way. It just works really well. You can do this in the free BMD as well. As you can see, though, her name was spelled Ryder on most of her records, but I knew that there was probability that it would have been spelled a different way. So I changed the mother's surname to Ryder, R-I-D-E-R, and then I came up with Lucy Ann, who was actually her child. That's one of the ones I knew was her child. So it really helps. I go from the marriage date or just above the marriage, just below the marriage date to at least 25 to 30 years because, you know, you never know how late a person's going to have a baby, especially in the 1800s. And then what I do is, like, I'll put female, I'll go down the list until I get to my 25, 30 year mark. Then I come back up again as males. And I do the same thing. I just check them all. I hope that helps. It's really awesome. It works really, really well. When you're searching the death index, it's the same basic thing. You just put in the names and then put in the dates and just go ahead. Now, the one difference is that, as you can see in the middle there is an age at death in years. So if you put in, like, you think, like, if you knew he was alive in 1911 and he was born in 1875, then you would put in his age, you would start from 1911 and you would put in his age that he would have been, which would be 36 or 35. I always do at least 5 years, because if you try the 2-year thing, it's just too painful to try to change. Because if you're going up and down the years, like I told you you do the same kind of thing with the births. If you're going up and down the years, you have to change them too often. You have to change that date, that age death too often. So I usually do 5 or even 10 years if it's a fairly uncommon name. So you can see there that these 3 came up in Camberwell, Blackburn, and Pancras, and the one that I was looking for was the one in the S quarter in Blackburn. So that's it for the GRO. And now we're going to talk about the Free UK Genealogy, which is the mother company of the Free BMD. The Free UK Genealogy is awesome. it provides free online access to family history records. So you do not have to pay for them like you do on Ancestry, like you do on MyHeritage and others. We create high quality transcriptions of public records from government sources, parish churches, and other trusted institutions. Oh, I took out believe, sorry. We believe in making and keeping public records accessible to all. We work with others with the same concern. And this is where you'll find free UK genealogy. And it's a very, very nice site. And they're working really hard to get a lot of information about how to do genealogy as well. So there are these three projects that they work on. One is the free BMD, which we're going to talk about, and that's for civil registration indexes of births, marriage, and deaths. The next is the freesend.org. And if you guys want me to, I'd be happy to do on freesend and free reg as well, another class on how to use these. But there's freesend.org. That is for the census returns. Freereg.org is the searches for baptism, marriage, and burial records in the parishes. Okay, so these are parishes, nonconformist records, and other sources that they can use to find registration of births, marriages, and burials. So we're going to talk about the free BMD, which is exactly the same thing as the GRO, but it works a little bit differently. So that's why I'm going to talk about it instead of just ignoring it. So this is one of the handwritten indexes that I talked to you about, and it's kind of interesting. They're actually fairly clear. Whoever the guy was that wrote them in that particular period is really clear. So when you get to the free BMD, it's the same. Just look it up on Google, search freebmd.org.uk, and it's right there. It'll come up to this page. You can search, you can view images, you can ask for more information, you can join their projects, and you can go to the transcribers page, which they're very, very transparent with their transcriptions. The free BMD database is from September 37 to the end of 1998 right now. But they haven't actually transcribed everything within those years. They're trying really hard to get them all done, but they haven't yet. And then most of the records that are done, they're from the early times. They did that quite some time ago. So they're working on the later ones. And it currently contains, look at that, like almost 3 billion records, 300 million distinct records. It's a good thing I'm a genealogist and not a mathematician. So my suggestion is that you search mindfully, because not everything's going to be there. That means that you come back monthly. They add more records monthly. If you haven't found it once, you may find it another time. So to search a birth on the free BMD, this is how you're going to do it. It comes up to this form, and it's, like I say, similar to the GRO. There's a little bit of difference. The districts will on the GRO will also scroll through. You can find them, but it's in a very little tiny box. When you put the district in, it's a small box. This is a big box. You can scroll down and find the district. It also is really nice because it gives you when they change those districts. The counties are also there. They also tell you when they change the counties. And then you can put in surname, first name. You can put as many names in first names as you want. It's not just one proper name. It's the whole, like if you had 2 or 3 even first names, you can put those all in. The spouse's first names as well. Your person's death age or date of birth, the date ranges. These, you can do a date range here from 1837 to 1983. So you can do as much as you want. I always suggest starting in the March range instead of going down. You can choose a different range on the quarter, but unless you know exactly what you're looking for, it's always best to start with the January, which is the March quarter, and end in the December, which is the last quarter. Okay. Then you can check the option boxes. I don't use those very often. They don't, again, for me, they don't work all that well for me personally, but you can try them and see what happens there. And then you click find if you want to find the record. If you want to count how many it's found, you go to count. If you want to reset the whole thing and take everything out that's in it, click on reset. So these are some guidelines for the free BMD. You can add as much or as little information as you want. All the fields are optional, as opposed to the GRO, which some of them are not optional. All the fields are optional. If you put more information in, you'll get fewer results. So if you need a lot of results, put less information in and then add to narrow the results. Large numbers of results, however, if it gets over, I think 3,000, they will just time you out and you won't be able to get that many results. So, and it takes forever too. They won't, it just keeps spinning and you're like, okay, so start smaller than 3,000. Like, don't search for every Smith in the country is what I'm saying. Search by location when you need to. I usually don't start with the location, but I would start, if I do put in a location, I would start with the county and not the district, because the district, again, they changed, or sometimes you think they're in one district and they're really not in that district. So use the registration district book, or you can also go to that other page that I showed you that had the districts outlined. I usually use a date range of about 2 to 5 years. Depends on what I'm looking for and how closely I think I know what the birth or death would be. Be aware, however, that even if you think it's an exact date, it may be wrong on the census. The census is, of course, you cannot take within 2 years. So, I mean, 2 years is as far out as you want to go. If you found a census record, it's got to be 2 years on either side at least. And then they didn't have to, like I say, they did not have to register, and they didn't have to register within a certain amount of time. And so they may have just waited until they could get to the town where they had to do the registration, or until they had enough money to put a stamp on it, or whatever it was. So it could be several months after what you think the birth date actually is. So do a range. You can search for all 3 records at once if you want for one person. Normally it works better to limit the search, but you can do it. It's birth, marriages, and deaths all at once. Enter the first and middle names when you need to on the same line. And the first name, they all go on the same line. Don't use periods. If you put a James W, don't put a period. That will make it so they won't find it. That's true in the GRO too. Don't use a period. If you want to use a wildcard search, you can put in an asterisk and you can put in a question mark. But the asterisk is for any number of characters and the question mark's just for one. So like if you didn't know if they spelled their name with an A or an O, Tharp or Thorpe, just put the question mark in the middle. The mother's name is available after 1911, and that is true on the free BMD, which is one reason why I don't always use it if I'm searching for a maiden name, because you really can't find the maiden name a lot of times on the free BMD. That URL at the bottom is actually a help there for how to search the names. It's really, really, really detailed. So that's really helpful. This is a sample search for John William Carter for his birth. And here you can see I've clicked on the district because I want you to see how that works. So when you click on the district, it's gray. That's the district that you've clicked on. You can click on more than one. If you don't click on one, it says select all. Or if you click on one and you decide you don't want it, just click on select all, and then it will go away. And the same with the counties. Okay, so I put in a 2-year range, and I didn't put in obviously his death age, and I didn't know his date of birth, so I didn't put those in. So when I did that, with that small amount of information, I came up with one, because I had put in his middle name. I did come up with the John William in Medway. And there were 0 with the mother's maiden name because, as I said, on the free BMD, you're not going to get maiden names. There were 37 when I didn't put in the district. When I put in the district of Medway, then it came up with just this one. If I put in the county that Medway's in, it came up with 2, him and another person in another district. This is the right person, and I got it. So I've got all the information I need. On this page, in order to make a new search, you click on new query. So if you want a new search with nothing in it, that's what you click on this page. To change your search and keep some of the stuff that's there, or to change some of the stuff and you want everything else is there, click on revise query, and it will save what you've already got in there, so you don't have to fill it out 100 times like you do with Ancestry sometimes. To save the search, you click Save Search or Download. This is a little bit complicated, so I would suggest that you go to the download help and look at that and make sure that you know what you're doing, because it's not that easy to do. to make it right anyway. If you look at the B and the M and the D and the key, those colors, those are the different colors that they use for the different vital statistics. So in case you're looking up 3 things at a time, you'll know the B is pink and the M is green and the D is gray. It also means that there's double keying, which they call, what they do is the review, or they have somebody else look it up twice. So double keying means it's been twice, looked up twice. So if the entry's in bold, like this one is, that means it was looked up twice and written down twice, so it's probably accurate. The double keyed ones are going to be more accurate. Not that they're not going to be accurate, but they'll be more accurate. The darker means they're not like touching each other in the book itself. They not one after the other. Okay, so if you click on the info button, which is right there next door, do you see that down here at the bottom? Right there, that info button, little red button right next to his name. If you click on that, it will give you the information about the transcription itself. In other words, who did it, and, you know, maybe some information about just the transcription. If you click on the little glasses there, that will take you to this right here, up here at the top, you can see. So it will take you to the actual index, the original index. This is what you'd get if you clicked on the same type of thing in Find My Past. They'll take you to this index. So it doesn't really tell you anymore, but sometimes when things like this one, see how this one on the Stoke one, for some reason the type has just gotten a little bit weird. So that might be important because it might be 230 instead of 280 or something like that. So I always look at the originals, no matter what. Did you have any questions about those other ones? If you do, they're right here. So I'm not going to go through all these because they're not that important, but they are kind of important. So you can look at this later on, or you can figure them out yourself when you go to the database. If you click on the district name, that gives you the historical dates for the district parishes. So that's actually quite useful. The district name is in blue right down here where it says Medway. If you click on the page numbers here, beside the district name there, that will give you the names of other people on that same page. So that's really helpful. And then bold entries have been transcribed by 2 transcribers, what I just said. And then if you have the italicized district name, that means that it may not be a correct name. There may be some suspicious thing with that name. So just kind of take it with a grain of salt. Okay, to search marriages, it's basically the same. So I'm not going to go through all that. There are a couple things though, is the spouse's first name or first names. If you put in one name, you'll get more. If you put in 2 names, you know, like she has a middle name, that will, but they don't ask for the maiden name. They just ask for the first name. Again, I clicked on the district and you can see that one district is selected. And then if I didn't want it, then I would select all. But it's basically the same thing, the date range and everything. Now down here in the bottom here, you can see this is 2 different results that I got. If you click on the page number on the marriages right here, instead of seeing other people who are on the page, they will show you the possible spouses that were on that page. So what that means is, like, if some other John William Carter got married in Blackburn, or some other of his spouse, Lucy Ann Cook, got married at that same time, it will give you the different people that they could have married, and you see that right there in the box next to it. So John William could have married Elizabeth Clark, or he could have married Lucy Ann Cook, or he could have married, or Lucy Ann could have married Little George, or either Elizabeth could have married him too. So it gives you all the people that were recorded in that quarter in that district on the same page. So that's really nice, actually, because now you kind of can figure out which one they actually married by going to censuses. Mostly I use census records to eliminate possible spouses. This morning when I was this afternoon when I was working with that woman, we did look at the censuses and it was not helpful. But when I went to the GRO and looked at their children, we looked at the census, make sure that I had the right children. And then when we went to the actual GRO with the children, then I found which spouse was his by finding the maiden name, which was a very interesting Polkington name. Okay, so these are some tips for finding marriages in the pre-BMD. and the GRO. So if it's 1875, prior to 1875, it was not compulsory, it could be missed. If you don't find the child after the marriage, look before the marriage, because a lot of times the child would be under the mother's maiden name in an earlier time. Also, a lot of times at the end, you can see that there may never have been a marriage. So in that case, things are a little bit weird. Widening the time scale is always good. So I either widen the time scale on the BMD, or I go, like I said, skip up and down. Interestingly enough, a lot of people got married in Scotland during the 1800s, particularly the second half of the century, because Scotland did not have the legal requirements that England and Wales had for getting married. They were a little bit looser. So a lot of people, if they wanted to get married and didn't want to have the hassle, they would go to Scotland, they would elope. So if you don't find it in England, you can possibly find it in Scotland. Now that's Scotland's People, so you'll have to look that up on a different website, Scotland's People. Also, the bride may have been married more than once, and in those marriages, sometimes the marriage is under her maiden name, but usually it's under her married name. So look under the name of the groom instead of under her maiden name. That's usually where you're going to find it. If there's no marriage record, it is very possible there was not a marriage. There's a really interesting thing that they did. We call it common law, but it was actually real marriage, and it was legal, and the parish recognized them. And what they would do is they would get together with witnesses, and they would just say, I'm going to commit to you. We are going to live together as man and wife. We are going to be married for the rest of our lives. And then they would be married. And they didn't, if they couldn't if they couldn't afford to pay a priest to marry them, or some other reason, they were out in the boonies. And this is also true of the United States in the early times, because they brought that custom over from England. So if they're British and you can't find a marriage record in a church, it's possible that they just did a common law type marriage, and it really was a legal marriage. They lived together as man and wife, and their children had the father's name, and they were not counted as illegitimate children until after 1775, and then they had to get married in the church, and they had to have their marriage registered in the church, or it wasn't legal. They could still live together. Nobody was going to do anything about it, but the child might or might not be counted as an illegitimate child, depending on how liberal the priest was at the time that they had the child. You can get divorces, by the way, but I'm not going to go into that today. There are ways to get divorces in records from the National Archives, but they didn't divorce very often up until around 1880 or 1890. Starting in 1890, you'll find more divorces. Some people did, and some people did not remarry if their spouse died. If you want to search a death, it's the same principle, exactly the same principle as the births and marriages. Just fill it in, no differences. So when I filled in Lucy Ann Cook there, oh dear, I got the wrong thing in there. Sorry, I put the wrong box in there. Under Lucy Ann with no age at all, like I did there. See, I didn't have at first I didn't put an age in. She was born in 1852. There were 7 results. If I just put Lucy without the A, then that came up 309. So see the difference there? And then if I put the county in, then it came up with 25, even with just under Lucy. And then by age or birth year and no county at all, it's 11. So you can see how it narrows it down. Under Lucy A, with the age and no county, I came up with 3, and I'm sorry, I put the wrong clip in there. But it did come up with her eventually. So I did get her death, which I was actually really looking for. I really needed it. So note that the age of death is entered between the name and the district. So right here, this is his death. There's 27 right here. That's his age right there when he died. And it's the same situation with the Blackburn and the 261. It will give you people on the page, and that's will take you to the district list. If you do add the age of death or the date of birth on the search page, you will not see anyone who was not that age at the time of death. Okay, so it kind of, in a certain way, avoids your range. All right, you can put the range in, but it won't probably work for you. So you kind of really need to know what the death date actually was in order to use that. Okay, so if you get things that you can't, that they're not exactly what you want or whatever, these are some next steps for you to do. Okay, you can just take a look at these. These are just examples of what you'll find when you click on things there. This is Lucienne's deaths that we were just looking at. This is another one with Lucienne, but just with the A and so on. So these are just some examples of what you can see. Now, if you put in an entry with more than one first name for the spouse, this warning will come up and it will say you may have missed some entries because you're searching for more than one first name when there was only one first name plus initials or just only one first name. So that's kind of a good thing that they'll tell you. And then this will take you to, when you click on the district information, it'll take you to the district information page. But it tells you where the district is and what county it's in when you click on that. So it's really awesome. Your next steps, if this doesn't exactly make what you're looking for, look for the parish death records in free reg. Look for remarriages, as we talked about, in free BMD. Look for census entries as a widow in free CEN or in other places where you can look at the census. Look for the children born between 1872 and 1881 in the free BMD, or well, in this case, it would be 1872 and 1881, because I know her husband died in 1881. So for this particular person, those are the dates. But I would look, as I said, for 25 to 30 years if I'm looking for children normally. And then you can look for those children, and then from there you should be able to find maiden names in the GRO or other children that they might not have been recorded yet in your genealogy. So there's lots of things you can do if it doesn't work for you exactly, but eventually, like I did for this lady this afternoon, you should be able to find a good portion of the information that you're looking for, and it should work for you. Okay, you can see up here though, see I put the end date as December 1962 because I had no idea how long she lived. So I put her start date as 100 years later for her death. That's kind of what I do. If I have to, I put it as long as I can, at least 110 years after the birthday. Okay, so that's it. There's lots more help, and there's lots of frequently asked questions here on this particular URL. And they have, again, the GRO used to have kind of a hard, it wasn't very easy to use help, but their help now has improved so much since they put that new help in there. So be sure to use their help. This is the frequently asked questions page, and it's really, really useful. If I were you, on both the free BMD and the GRO, I would click all the help buttons that I saw and see if they wouldn't help me do better searches and better use this. Amazing. They're both like, it's just phenomenal for British research. You can't do British research really well unless you use the GRO and the free BMD. They're just like gold. So that's my feeling about these two great sources, and I hope that you can learn to use them.